All right, so a couple years ago, I was in the Wisconsin woods. It was the middle of the night, and it was 88 miles into a race. I had just plopped down into a camp chair. It wasn't very stable, and I wasn't sure how I was going to get up again. About 3 miles prior to that, my pacer, I was laying on the side of a trail, literally laying, trying to get my shoes off. And my pacer had just lanced these massive blisters that were on the balls of my feet. Pictures later. And somehow we kind of crawled into this aid station, or she was very able, I was not. And in this moment, she came up to me. I was eating a piece of watermelon, and she says, "Okay, it's time to go." And I was just completely defeated, and I said, "Kelly, I've done the math. I can't finish in time." She's like, "Oh, you're suddenly good at math?" And I'm like, and she looked at me square in the face, and she said, "You might be done, but you're not finished yet." And then she just took off without me. Down the trail, it was dark, and in these runs like this, runs that might go up to 100 miles or more, you usually have someone with you in the last 30 miles or so in case you start to hallucinate, in case you pass out, in case something happens, or just someone maybe to like sing songs to you. So eventually I got up and I went to find her. Fortunately for me, she had just kind of went around the corner out of view. Yeah, go ahead to the next one. And so this is me at mile 99 of this race. It's far enough away where you can't see the tears in my eyes. So when Josh asked me to talk about ultra running, I said I would, but I've always hated that word ultra running because it sounds like some superhero type of running. I picture like Jesse Owens or Usain Bolt, and I'm not that. I'm not fast by any means. I like to eat snacks when I run. I'm just somebody who runs a lot, sometimes hours or even days at a time. And so I thought I'd share a little bit about those experiences. When you think of somebody who runs a lot like this, I picture somebody who might be maybe a little bit restless, comfortable being alone, someone like Forrest Gump. So what is an ultra runner? An ultra runner is someone who runs ultra marathons, right? Creative name. But it's also, an ultra marathon is something that's longer than 26.2 miles, your traditional marathon. I know when I tell people I like to run ultra marathons, usually I get two responses. One is, I don't even like to drive that far, and neither do I, that's why I run. And then the other one is, don't your knees hurt after something like that? And fortunately, not yet. I try to do a lot of yoga to try to keep away from the knee pain. Some of my running background, I told a friend that I was asked to give this talk, and he said, I don't think they asked the right person. And she started asking me, like, what kind of races have you run? And I told her, and she's like, yeah, I think you may qualify. I've run 14 road or trail marathons. This is over the last 10 years. And then in addition to that, 12 ultra marathons, including 4 50Ks, which is about 31 miles, 3 50-milers, 4 100Ks, which is about 62 miles, and 1 100-miler. I'm going to come back to this. I also, out of all the times I've started a race, there's been 2 times that I have not been able to finish that race. And both of them were at the Vermont 100. I used to live in Rhode Island. I used to train out in Vermont. I love it up there. And one time I tried to run it. I ran into some issues around mile 62 where my stomach would no longer process food. That's the really polite way of describing what you're probably thinking. Another time I tried to run it. It was 3 weeks after I already completed a 100-miler. I wasn't completely healed. And it was probably the only time in history that Vermont hit 105 degrees. And a lot of these races have river crossings that without bridges. You see the pictures of the beautiful bridges in Vermont. They don't put those on the course. So at 105 degrees, I went to cross a river, and the water felt so good, I just wouldn't get out. I just took off my bib, and there was 30 of us in that river, and we're like, nope, we're done today. No regrets. So it's kind of funny, ultra running actually started as really long horse races. One of the most famous ones, the first one, was just in Northern California, Western states. It's a 100-mile horse race, and about somewhere in the 1970s, this guy, Gordy Ainsleigh, really famous, still alive, still participates in the event, lined up to ride this race with this horse, and his horse had injured itself in the weeks prior to it. So he said, I think I can do it on foot. And they said there's still a 24-hour cutoff time. And he's like, I got this. And he ran, I can't remember where it starts, but it's basically Central California it ends at Auburn. And he ran it in just over 20 hours. And he continued to compete in it for years, and it started to catch on. People were like, well, if Gordy can do it, maybe I can do it. And incidentally, the race that I did not finish twice is the Vermont 100, and it's the only 100-mile race where you still run alongside horses. So if you've ever been like in the middle of the night running on a trail to get passed by a horse, it's a terrifying experience. But one of my big problems with the experiences I have, I love running, but it's those two DNFs, those two races that I didn't finish that just really, really irk me. And so my goal kind of moving forward is hopefully I'm going to settle down, like get another 100-mile race under my belt here, and then go back and do Vermont to finish that one. Just a couple details about ultra marathons that I wrote down in case. I mean, it's kind of this knowledge that ultra marathon usually has strict cutoff times. You have to finish, 50K within 6 hours typically, 50 miles within 12 hours. For 100-milers, they give you either 24 or 30 hours to finish it. And when you do finish it, because the horse race history, when you finish a 100-mile race, they give you a great big belt buckle. It's just bigger if you finish it under 24 hours. My belt buckle is kind of normal sized to finish in about 28 hours. They're almost all run on single-track trails. Think of maybe the trail you take to get up Hogback. And course difficulty is often a badge of honor. Race directors compete to see who could be the most sadistic about their courses. It's common to see a 100-mile race that has maybe 25,000 to 30,000 feet of elevation through the course of that 100 miles. But the great thing about them is your aid stations aren't like, if you're doing a race in town or a marathon or something, aid stations typically have like maybe some water or running gel. If you go through an aid station at an ultra marathon, it's like a buffet. They have like quesadillas, grilled cheese, burritos. I went through one that had pizza. It passed. Often they have like fruit, pickles. Absolutely, every day I want pickles. Sometimes even shots of Fireball, which I don't see the logic. I have not partaken in that yet. And another thing to know about ultra runners, in case you ever meet one, is that they have weird toes. I don't have pictures of this, but we often, when we get together, we talk about how many toenails have fallen off. And in fact, something that I do before every race is I have my daughter, I have a 12 or 14-year-old daughter now, paint my toenails, because if I look down and I see red and blue and pink, I don't think about the suffering that they're going through. So I got into running around 2011 as a way to manage anxiety. I'm kind of a nervous, anxious person, and I just moved to Rhode Island with my 10-month-old daughter and my wife, and we had just found out that my wife was pregnant, and I was starting a PhD program. It was just a very intense experience, and kind of at the peak of this stress, when I kind of felt like I couldn't handle much more. I laced up some shoes. We were close enough to the ocean. I ran about a mile to the ocean, and then turned and started heading north and ran, and I came home about 3 hours later, and I just felt like it just felt right. And I know it's not for everybody, but for me it was that thing that just kind of allowed me to deal with the anxiety. Not a replacement for therapy, I'm a strong advocate of therapy also, but it definitely helped. So I just want to say a couple things about the 3 things that running has taught me, and then we'll get to cake. So there is another slide here, I think. So one of the things that running has taught me, and it reminds me every day, is to be grateful. Being out in nature, being carried by my own legs, it's just such a gift. And I'm reminded this on runs. This one is out at Brown Mountain, the first one on the right. The one at left was last April. I did a 100K out at Zion National Park. And it's just hard to it's hard to get lost in your stresses and your concerns when you're in the moment in these sorts of places. So it really teaches me to be grateful. Another thing that it's taught me is the value of community. I have one more here, community. We get together, we have a group of us who get together. It's open to the public every Wednesday night. We meet at Klamath Commons Park, so tonight. We run, Doug joins us from time to time too, and we get together and run out on Moore Mountain. And running is often a solitary event, but it requires support. It requires that pacer through the night. It requires that running partner to kind of push you on those weekends, to hit those long distances. You have aid station volunteers. You just have so many people to share those stories with. And then also the final thing, hesitating whether I want to show this picture or not, but it teaches me the value of doing hard things. I think I gave a warning in case. So like maybe give it a limit. Maybe only show it for like a few seconds and move on. It teaches you to do hard things. This is my feed after I finished a 100-mile race. They don't normally look like that. They're normally about half that size. But running long distances teaches you how to embrace challenges. And it's not just about pushing physical limits, but it's signing up or committing to doing something where there's a good chance you're going to fail at it. Because there's a lot to gain from succeeding at something, but I think there's also as much, if not more, to gain from failing at something and approaching it from a different angle. That's always been really important to me, or at least since I've started running. Sort of in closing, I wanted to say, and maybe as a way to just be held accountable, I said earlier that I've finished one 100-mile race and I've not finished 2 of them, and I just have to get 1 more under my belt before I agree to sign up for Vermont 100 again. And I just recently did that. I signed up for the Oregon Cascades 100, which is in August 22 and 23, because they go multiple days. If I've just started training for that one. So the goal is I finish that one, and then I try to get out to Vermont and kind of make up what I left behind there. So thanks for listening. And if anybody ever wants to go for a run or a walk or whatever, I'm always up.